Did the North betray Daenerys? Did Jon? Should Daenerys have abandoned the North to the others, let them all die? Or perhaps should she have burnt them to save herself from future treason? That and more, but first, the business. Please consider supporting this channel on Patreon or becoming a channel member. Memberships go for as little as $1 a month. You get early access to videos, sneak peeks, and other perks as well. There's a link down in the description box if you want to check me out. But if you find that's not for you, that's perfectly fine. All I ask is that you like this video, leave a comment, subscribe, and ring that bell. Those small things really help out a lot. And now with that done, let's get into it. There is one common complaint, one criticism I see often repeated from people that had a problem with how Dany's story was concluded in season 8, and that is the North betrayed Daenerys. This is often said in conjunction with Jon betrayed Daenerys, and that Dany should have burnt the North or let them die to the others. Season 8 has its fair share of problems. If you've read the books, you'll find that all seasons have their fair share of problems, but the issues really get worse in the later seasons. But this whole thing with Jon and the North betraying Dany was mistreated by the North, it's a huge misconception, and I'm not really sure where it comes from. And that's what this video is going to be all about, clearing up that misconception. Let's first start with Dany was mistreated by the North. Now this is going back to the first episode of season 8, when Dany arrives in the North and she receives less than a warm welcome. But it's the North, it's cold, what did you expect? But all jokes aside, this sort of behavior from the Northmen to outsiders is book accurate. Dan and David on many occasions show a shocking lack of knowledge when it comes to the source material, but having the people of the North be wary of outsiders is very book accurate. So the first episode of season 8 is pretty much doing exactly what we saw in the first episode of season 1. A monarch comes north and the people gather to welcome them. The music is the same, some of the shots are exactly the same, it's a callback. But in season 1, it was King Robert. And in the books, when Robert and Ned, they go off to have a quiet conversation together, Robert mentions that the people of the North hid from him. Let me actually pull up A Search of Ice and Fire to bring up the quote. Alright, so I have it here now. Quote, Robert snorted, bogs and forests and fields, and scarcely a decent inn north of the neck. I've never seen such vast emptiness. Where are all your people, Ned? Likely they were too shy to come out, Ned jested. He could feel the chill coming up the stairs, a cold breath from deep within the earth. Kings are a rare sight in the North. Robert snorted. More likely they were hiding under the snow. Snow, Ned! End quote. So on one hand, this is also considered foreshadowing for R+L=J, but on the other hand, this is proof that the people of the North, they don't really respond well to outsiders. What happened to Daenerys and her people was not really exceptional. But there's been this outrage to how she was treated when that's just how it be. Also, she brought dragons which people haven't seen in hundreds of years, and that's kind of scary. I don't really blame people for screaming when she arrived. But Dany has a dedicated part of the fandom, and they really get upset when other characters, when they meet her, they don't immediately fall down and kiss her feet and profess their undying love and fealty to her. But anyway, that's one thing I wanted to cover, the North being very apprehensive to outsiders. It's very book accurate. So many people complained about the lack of book accuracy in the later seasons, and when they get it, they get upset because it didn't look good for Daenerys. But moving right along, let's go over the misconception that Jon somehow betrayed Daenerys. He never did. I thought it was common knowledge. It was pretty much a joke, a meme, that all Jon said for season 8 was, "She's my queen." "You're my queen. We need allies." Over and over and over again. Also, something he repeated quite often was, "I don't want it. I never have." Aegon Targaryen / Jon Snow did not want to be king of Westeros. He abdicated, which is something he's totally able to do. He's not the first Targaryen to do that. But Dany still was afraid that Jon would be used politically against her. She wanted him to keep silent about the truth. There's nothing Jon could have done if there are people out there that want to use him politically against Daenerys. And by saying, "You're my queen, I don't want it," he's demonstrating he will stand by her side if those moments ever arise. And they do. Do you know how incredibly selfish it is for Dany to tell Jon to beg him, don't tell anyone about your true identity? That's a truth that affects the Starks, the last of the Starks. They think that Jon is their half-brother, when that's not the truth. They will still love each other as siblings, I'm sure, but this truth changes so much about what they know about the history of their house. Lyanna running away with Rhaegar was a pretty big deal for House Stark. Learning the truth about that, what happened to Lyanna, what their father sacrificed, the lie he maintained for all these years, that is vastly important for the last of the Starks. This is only an inconvenient truth for Daenerys, and for her to have said, put it away, don't tell anybody, it's incredibly selfish. What she should have said was, this might not be great for me politically, but I will still support you in this, the same way you have supported me. All that Jon did was call off their relationship when he learned they were related, which he was well within his rights to do. There's this weird thing with Jon where people are like, you're Targaryen, Jon, you're supposed to fuck your aunt. He didn't want to. He thinks it's weird. He might have been Targaryen by blood and by name, but he was raised a Stark. They don't do incest on that level. And then going to the Stark family tree and saying, well, these two cousins, this aunt, Jon wasn't raised like that. And just because it happened in the past doesn't mean Jon wants to do it. He doesn't have to. What is with the... I couldn't even imagine. Jon doesn't want to be with Dany because he found out they're related. And then you bring over his family tree and you're like, well, look, on your Stark side, 3 generations ago, your aunt married her own nephew. So? But yeah, that's all Jon did. He pulled back from the romantic side of their relationship. They could totally be allies, even friends, even, aunt and nephew, but he did not want the romance part. That seemed to weird him out, and that was perfectly acceptable. And then you have people say, oh, Jon pulled away from her when she needed him most. She lost her dragons, she lost her friend, and then he decides he doesn't want to be with her. As long as he's not a piece of shit like the boyfriend was from Midsommar, who was also dating a girl named Dany who also went mad in the end. Funny how that works. As long as he's not being a jerk, he's being supportive in what ways he can be. He doesn't have to be romantically linked with her. That's so weird to try to force that on him. And to call that betrayal when he's working with his own heavy issues. He just found out his name is not Jon Snow. Can he deal with his own identity crisis? Jon has a lot to unpack. He just came back from the dead, which, let's be honest, had no effect on the story, but that's a different video. I guess one thing that was relevant about Jon's resurrection was that time they were on a boat. It was just him and Dany. It was in the Beyond the Wall episode, and she saw all his wounds, and she was like, you got stabbed a bunch of times, and you're still alive? Who are you, Chad from Scream 6? Ultimately, not that important, but still it happened. And yeah, he came back from the dead, found out there was nothing on the other side. His brother is a monotone tree. His sister is an assassin. And then he found out they're not actually his brother or sister. There's a lot going on in Jon's own story. There's a lot for him to unpack. But then Dany comes along and throws a suitcase at the back of his head, the size of Balerion, the Black Dread. Him not wanting to carry on the romantic side of their relationship is fine. They are still friends. They are still family. Ending that is not betrayal. I would be spiraling, but he has to, through all of that, still stay with Dany, or else she's gonna go mad. That's wild to think of. How about the two of them get together, go to a maester, and try some medieval therapy? But on this point, Jon didn't betray Daenerys. He was her staunch advocate until the very end. There's that scene where there's a council and they're planning the invasion of King's Landing, and Sansa wants to hold back and let the North rest, and Jon commits to it. In fact, if HBO, can I call you Max? If Max allows, I'm going to show a scene from that right here.
The Northern forces will honor their promises and their allegiance to the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms.
Jon goes against his cousin's sisters in favor of his aunt / ex-girlfriend. Sansa and Arya do not get their way. Jon overrides them. And because he doesn't want to date her anymore, that's betrayal. Jon is closer to her than any ex I've ever had. And this brings me to my final point, that the North betrayed Daenerys. I'm going to play one more scene, and I want you to pay close attention to who's there in the South, in King's Landing, supporting Dany.
Move!
Yeah, that's right. The Northern armies, with Jon as their leader, rode all the way south, tired after so many battles, and they've helped her take the capital. In fact, once the bells ring and Daenerys decides not to be a good person anymore, she becomes a bad person. She, switching sides. The North, they are with her. They are right behind her. She doesn't even have to tell them. Once she starts Dracarysing everywhere, the North is like, oh hell yeah, let's go. And they charge past Jon, their actual leader, to follow Daenerys. Jon has to tell them to stop, and many of them just blow past him. He even has to kill one of his own men. They were down with Dany's cause. And one last point before I wrap this up, even after Dany goes mad, burns the city, after Jon sees burnt bodies, children, corpses everywhere, after Dany goes full Barbenheimer, he has to be told by Arya, hey, your ex-girlfriend/aunt, she's evil now, and she might see you as a threat. Be careful. When Tyrion is trying to explain to him, hey, your ex-girlfriend/aunt, she's evil now, Jon argues with him. You think our house words are stamped on our body? What am I doing? You saw it at the intro. Tyrion has to explain to Jon that Dany has to be killed now because she's not going to stop. And then even after all that, once Jon goes to Dany, he tries to talk her out of it. Hey, maybe you don't want to be a tyrant? And he realizes she's not going to stop, so he kills her. And if you count this as betrayal, you are not a smart person. And I mean that because Dany just burnt a city full of innocent people. Dany killed more people in one day than Cersei did in 8 seasons. Jon did what he had to do. I think for some people, they believe there was room for a redemption arc, that Dany could be forgiven, which is incredible logic. I can't even lie. Just because you as an audience member, as a fan of the character, believe that she can do no wrong doesn't mean the story can excuse burning an entire city. There's just no way. And besides, when Jon is talking to Dany, it's evident. The story makes it clear she's not coming back from this. There's no way. There's no therapy. There's no talking her down. She gotta die, and she did. The whole idea that Jon and the North betrayed Dany is just not demonstrated anywhere in the episodes I watched. Jon dedicated himself to her and her cause. I've seen it said that, Jon didn't appreciate the fact that Dany lost Viserion trying to save him. In that same episode, Jon does what he had been refusing to do the entire season. He bends the knee. And then the North turns on him for that because he was king in the North. They elected him that. And then he goes and pulls a Torrhen Stark. So Jon risked his reputation, his own position of power, to show that he was dedicated to Dany, to show that he appreciated her great sacrifice. And that's betrayal? Question mark? I wanted to get into Sansa and Dany, but I'll save that for a different discussion. I'll just say this here and now. If Dany can't handle shade from a 14-year-old, if she's getting outsmarted politically by Sansa Stork, maybe it's a good thing you're gone, Dany, because you know what? Marjorie, she would have ate you right up. And the whole thing about Dany should have just let the North die to the others is very brainless behavior because that would have just meant more enemies for her to fight. And the thing is, if you haven't been paying attention to the very basics of the story, some of the most evident themes contained within, the idea is, when it comes to the enemy that is the others, the point the story is trying to make with the existential threat that is the others is that even if Dany and Sansa, Dany and Arya, if they don't get along, if they have great differences between them, the point is to set those differences aside and fight the common enemy. You can't say Dany's being mistreated, so she should take her dragons, her armies, and go home. The fuck? I will not sit here and pretend like I get everything right when it comes to analyzing, discussing this series. But I've seen some really bad takes get really popular, and that's kind of sad. The discourse is kind of dying, which is why I took the plunge and I finally did what I should have done a long time ago and deleted my Twitter. my ex account because I couldn't take it anymore. That's the end of the video. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. And if you did, let me know in the comments. Do you think Jon in the North betrayed Dany? Let me know what you think. Also, subscribe, ring that bell, consider becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter. Thanks to the following Patreon supporters and channel members, including Philip E. Again, thank you all for watching. I'll see you all for the next one. Peace. Why does Jon have to make a case for why he doesn't want to fuck his own aunt?